what story to choose today? I'm thinking... Oh, perfect. Max's Wild Goose Chase, written by Sandra J. Phillipson, illustrated by Robert Tokach. What does an author do in a book? And what does an illustrator do? Boys and girls, we know an author is the person that writes the story. He or she takes the time to sit down and plan their writing. An illustrator is the one that illustrates or draws or paints or oil pastels the pictures in the book. Let's go ahead and read it.
Let's go ahead and read Max's Wild Goose Chase. It's written by Sandra J. Phillipson and illustrated by Robert Tokach. Now, turn to your guardian and tell them what a writer does. Now, turn to your guardian and tell them what an author does. Boys and girls, if you told your guardian that a writer is the person that writes the story, they formulate the words which are turned into sentences, which then are turned into paragraphs, which then are turned into multi-page stories, you're correct. Now, if you told your guardian that the author is really an awesome person, you're also right. Now, if you told your guardian that the illustrator is the person that illustrates the story, I mean, they draw the pictures, they paint, they draw with pencils, they use markers, crayons, oil pastels, you're so right. Let's go ahead and start the story. Max's Wild Goose Chase. Max was a brown and white English Springer Spaniel who lived in a small town in Ohio named Chagrin Falls. Did you think I wasn't going to show you the words? I'm just kidding.
Max was a brown and white English Springer Spaniel who lived in a small town in Ohio named Chagrin Falls. It was named that because the Chagrin River flowed right through the middle of town, and as the river dropped under the bridge beside the popcorn shop, it created a beautiful waterfall. Max loved the popcorn shop because they sold ice cream there, and some little kid was always dropping his cone on the sidewalk outside. Max usually came away from a trip downtown licking his chops. Now, Max was a mischievous hunting dog. He got into trouble so often that if Max would have been a kid, he would have spent a lot of his days doing time out in the principal's office or after school in detention. Some who knew him thought that Max needed to be in a very strict obedience school. Obedience school? No way, thought Max as he got ready for his daily walk. But it was never a walk with Max. As soon as his leash was off, it was a run, a chase, and a hunt. In the woods and in the river, Max thought he was a king, and he could do as he pleased. He was a Springer with an attitude. Water from the river dripped from Max's brown and white freckled nose as he shook off from his first swim. As he was shaking, he suddenly heard a funny sound coming from the tall grass in Jackson Field. "St! St! Max! Max!" someone called. Max ran toward the hissing sound to find his friend, the black snake, curled up on a rock, waiting for the sun to warm him up. "You had better watch out, Max," he hissed. "Why?" asked Max impatiently. "Because Goosey Roughrock is out to get you for chasing his wife and gooselings out of the river the other day," replied the snake. "Is that all?" laughed Max. "Goosey Roughrock always has his knickers in a twist over something. I was just having a little fun with them. No harm done. Besides, those little feathery brats of his are always in my way when I want to go fishing. Swimming in their little rows, quacking at their mom for food, and being so noisy. They scare off my fish." "I heard that Goosey is really ticked off. It isn't exactly the first time you have bothered them, Max." "Oh, phooey. What's the big deal?" snorted Max. The snake shrugged and grimaced, but Max was off and running in the direction of Goose Rock Beach, the hangout of Goosey Roughrock. Roughrock, as his friends called him, was the biggest, baddest goose on the river, and most of the other creatures in the woods were just a bit afraid of him. He had quite a temper and a reputation for picking fights over the smallest of insults. If Goosey Roughrock was a person, he probably would have worn a black leather motorcycle jacket, a hat perched on the side of his head, and heavy black boots with silver studs on them. He might have even had a tattoo across his back that read, "Born to Fly." It was well known around the river community that Goosey Roughrock had no love for Max, whom he considered to be a major pain, an irritating annoyance, and an all-around pest. Max was always barreling into the water and chasing the other ducks and geese, just for the sport of it. Whenever Max was in the woods, the waterfowl were always in a tizzy, and this annoyed Goosey Roughrock. He liked order, quiet, and a peaceful river with himself in charge. This latest assault on his wife and children did not sit well with Goosey Roughrock. He was furious. Max needed to be taught a lesson. But what kind of lesson, Goosey Roughrock wondered, as he headed for the meeting he had called at the Goose Lodge. The Goose Lodge, an abandoned beaver dam on the far side of the river, was a place where all the geese got together to discuss problems on the river or just to have fun. This was going to be a serious meeting. As Goosey Roughrock called the meeting to order, he announced that the first and only order of business was to think of a way to teach that pesky rascal Max a lesson he would never forget. Everyone had complaints about Max and ideas for revenge. Some suggested covering him with crazy glue and sticking him to a tree. Others wanted to put bubble gum in his kibble or make him a reservation for the smallest cage at the nearest kennel. Each idea was more outrageous than the next. What would work? Finally, after haggling over 10 minutes, Roughrock and his friends agreed on a plan. It would take split-second timing and lots of strength, but it might just work. 4 big geese, including Goosey's wife, Scratchy Rock, flew off to get the required equipment. In the meantime, Max had been sidetracked on his way to Goose Rock Beach. He stopped to sniff some fragrant grass and roll around on his back in some fresh horse poop. This last habit of Max's drove everyone who knew him crazy. Not only did he smell bad afterwards, but he loved smelling bad. Every time he did it, everyone around would hold their noses and say, "Yick! Yuck! Ick! Oh, you are so gross, Max." He just laughed to himself and ran toward the beach. As Max was rounding the corner, he felt something pull on his neck. He stopped short and looked up, just as a big vine from the oak tree had looped itself around his neck. Before he could shake free, he felt another vine tighten around his chest. He had run into a trap. All of a sudden, he felt all the vines tighten, and he was being lifted off his feet and into the air. In a panic, Max looked up and saw Goosey Roughrock, Goosey's wife, Scratchy, and the 2 of their biggest goose friends, with the ends of the vines in their beaks. They were lifting him off the ground, and as soon as he saw that he was flying over the river. "Holy horse poop!" Max yelled. "Put me down!" Goosey and his friends just smiled, pulled up on the vines, flapped their big wings harder, and headed for the Witch's Swamp. This was the foulest swamp in all of Chagrin Valley. It was icky, it was sticky, it was black and slimy, it was full of bugs, biting fish, and snapping turtles. It was thoroughly dank, rank, and disgusting. Goosey and his friends thought it was just the place to drop Max for a little swim. He'll never get all of that slime off, and he'll be in trouble at home. Besides, that place is really dark and scary and smelly, and there are things that bite in there. What a payback, they all had yelled at the goose meeting earlier. Max howled and yelled throughout his harrowing flight. Being suspended in the air by the vines was not comfortable, and he had no clue as what to do and what was going to happen to him. Still, he didn't think it was going to be good. Making a lot of noise was all about he could do, so he whined constantly. Guys, what's the problem? I'm just an innocent puppy. Whatever you think I did, I didn't do it. Look at this. Look at his face. Is this face of a criminal? Whoa. Watch that treetop. You could scrape off my pedicure, Max implored. After only a few minutes in the air, Max was surprised to hear Scratchy say in her high-pitched, squeaky voice, "Okay, Rough Rock, darling, we're here. Drop him on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Max opened his eyes just in time to see Goosey Rough Rock and his wife grinning at him. Rough Rock flapped his wings in a not-so-nice gesture as Max hurtled toward the ground. The next thing he knew, Max was in the witch's swamp. Oh, the slime, the smell, the muck, and the mud. It made for a nice, soft landing. Unknown to Goosey Rough Rock and friends, the swamp was Max's favorite place. It was full of things he loved to play with. Water bugs, turtles, slugs, bullfrogs, and lots of gooey, icky, black, and stinky mud. He could fish and swim around in this mud for hours, happy as a pig in its sty. As he heard Rough Rock and his goose friends fly off screeching with laughter, Max looked up. If the geese had been looking down, all they would have seen was Max's black, slimy face and a great big toothy white smile. "Thanks, guys," said Max as he dove underwater for a fish. Later that night, Max had to spend the evening in his doghouse after his mom gave him a bath with the cold hose water. The herbal shampoo made him sneeze, and he was miffed that the geese had ganged up on him. Still, he had fun in the swamp, and he fell asleep fast, snoring and snorting in his doghouse. In his mind, he was still Chagrin's main bad boy and undisputed king of the Chagrin River woods. The end. Let's write. Max is a real dog. What parts of the story do you think really happened? Grab a piece of paper. Jot down some ideas. What parts of the story do you think really happened? What parts of the story came from the author's imagination? Think up some other ways the geese could have gotten even with Max. Max has adventures in the woods around the river and the swamps every day. Make up your own Max adventure story. Hint, Max likes adventures that get him dirty and smelly. Boys and girls, you can even draw a picture if you'd like. If you end up answering these questions and drawing your story picture, please attach that to your packet in your yellow folder and send it back to school. Thanks, boys and girls. I hope you enjoyed the story. See you next video.